Hey guys, it's Alex. Today I want to talk about getting better sound for YouTube. If you spend any time out on YouTube, you know that most of the audio out there is really terrible. It's pretty crazy how bad sound is out on the internet. But by going through some of the problem-solving techniques that I use while I'm recording, you can apply those same ideas to your own recordings and elevate the quality of your audio content. So let's dive right in. Now the fundamental idea here is the source quality rule. If you start with a good recording, you can make it sound great. If you start with a bad recording, it's really only going to sound marginally less bad. It's never going to sound good. If you've met anybody that has that fix it in post mentality, just run, get as far away as possible. That's a very bad thing to do. You should take the time to get it right the first time so you don't have to go back around the second time to solve all the problems that you created for yourself. Most kinds of content, generally speaking, the top priority is dialogue. Good dialogue sounds full, it sounds resonant, it sounds warm, there aren't any irritating frequencies in it, and it's nice and cinematic and full-bodied without being too over the top. A lot of things can contribute to bad dialogue, but by breaking them down into a few categories, I can try and problem solve on site and pick what I can fix and what I'm going to have to deal with after the fact. The first category is environmental problems. Am I next to a freeway or a street? Do I have cars going by? Am I having to deal with air traffic? Is there an air conditioner on in the next room? That kind of stuff. Next is gear. Do I have the right kind of microphone for what I'm recording? Are my preamps a little bit too noisy? Are my cables shielded or not? And maybe they're picking up some kind of RF interference. The last category is for issues that I'm going to have to fix after the fact. Maybe there are irritating frequencies in my voice that just naturally exist. I'm going to have to notch those out. Maybe I wasn't able to get away from the freeway traffic, so I'm going to have to figure out how to denoise that audio. Or maybe the room that I'm in is just too reverberant, so I'm going to have to try and mitigate that reverb with some kind of tool in post. The point is that by making good choices during the recording process regarding your environment and the gear that you're using, you're going to be able to spend a lot more time in post making good audio sound great rather than trying to fix what's broken after the fact. Environmental issues can be some of the hardest problems to solve. There's really only so much you can do to get away from roads or air traffic or anything contaminating like that. But even something as simple as switching the room that you're working in can help and can do wonders for sound. So it's really worth considering what space you're going to be using for recording, because that can determine a whole lot of the problems you're going to encounter. In an average kitchen, you have all kinds of hard surfaces. There are countertops, the floor, the walls, the cabinetry, all of that stuff is really, really reflective. Whereas in a living room or a bedroom, you can generally have carpeted floors, you have soft absorbent furniture like a bed or a couch, and you don't have nearly as many reflective surfaces that'll bounce sound around the room, so you can get much cleaner takes just because those rooms lend themselves to fewer reflections and therefore better audio. Otherwise, the next easiest thing to do is probably put up some sound baffling. It's going to absorb a bunch of the reflections of the room. It can kind of cut down on some of the traffic noise if you do it right, and they're pretty cheap to make with stuff that you can find just at a local hardware store. I've got a bunch hanging on the walls around my studio here, and it really, really helps dampen all the reflections in this room so that I can talk a little bit more loudly, and it's not going to be all reverberant and weird. If you guys are interested, I can put up a video showing you how to make these panels pretty inexpensively and how to hang them in the right spots so that they're not just occupying wall space without actually helping the room. Once I've solved all the problems I can in my recording environment, the next thing I'm going to look at is gear. For example, I've got a small capsule condenser microphone with a cardioid pickup pattern, picking up directly what's in front of it, rejecting all the traffic noise behind it from the freeway that I live right next to. In this space, this picks up a lot less of the reflections and sounds a little bit more natural than using something like a shotgun microphone. Shotgun microphones are actually tailored more for exterior environments, where something like a cardioid or a supercardioid pickup pattern is going to be a lot better for an interior space. I'm not pointing it at my mouth because it would pick up a lot of little clicks and pops and sibilants and plosives that I really don't want to get, and pointing it towards the chest a little bit picks up the natural resonance of my voice so it sounds a little bit more full. This is going into a preamp on my MBOX 3 Pro. There are plenty of better preamps out there, and there are plenty of worse preamps out there. You can find them for all kinds of different prices, and you got to pick what works for you. Additionally, I know a lot of people are using mobile recorders rather than going straight into a computer like I am, so it's really important to find a good mobile recorder because some of the cheaper ones can be a lot noisier in the preamp stage. I personally hate the Zoom series. The H4n and the H5 have actually really kind of screwed me in a number of different instances trying to record quiet sounds because the preamps are so noisy when you have to crank them. It just kind of ruins things. It's really frustrating. I'm personally a bigger fan of the Tascam DR100 or maybe the DR70, but again, sound isn't really a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, so what works for me or doesn't work for me may be different for you. After I've selected the gear that I'm going to use and I've recorded my source material, I listen back to it to see what problems I still need to fix using tools in post. I'm applying a little bit of light compression to my voice first so that it keeps levels in check a little bit better and things are a little more consistent in terms of volume. Then I'm going to a de-esser, which is actually just a compressor that's targeting the sibilant parts of speech, so it only works on s and ch kinds of sounds, but it does the same thing. It just lowers the level of that in relation to everything else. After that, I'm feeding everything into an EQ, which I've got a spectrum analyzer up so you can see what it's doing a little bit more easily. But as you can tell, I'm not doing very much. I'm just rolling off a lot of low end that's really not necessary or useful. And there are a couple of frequencies that my voice has that are more irritating to my ears, so I've just notched them out while leaving pretty much everything else alone. And last, I'm feeding all this into a limiter, which is really just bringing up the overall level of my voice and making sure it doesn't clip or overload so that when you're watching this on YouTube, you don't have to turn the volume up and down or worry about whether or not you can hear what I'm saying or if it's too loud. It's just consistent. One last thing, if it's absolutely necessary, I will run some denoising software on all this stuff, but I try to avoid that as much as possible because it can artifact a little bit and make things sound really weird really fast if you're not careful. So sticking with just simple compression, de-essing, EQ, and then a little bit of level matching can go a long way because I took the time to figure out what challenges my environment presented and adjust accordingly with how I set this space up, the gear that I'm using, and then tailoring again just that little bit of post-processing to bring out the things that I want you to hear best. So that's how I approach setting up my own space, and by thinking about your setups in the same way, hopefully this is going to help you identify problems and their solutions a lot more easily than just blindly going after a new piece of gear or wondering why it is that you can't get clean sound and not knowing where to start. Now, let's answer some quick questions. Is it true that having a good beard helps filter room noise from vocals? Yes, it's absolutely true, and that's the first step to denoising any audio that I take is grow more beard. Do I see FabFilter plugins over there? Why, yes, you do. I'm using a FabFilter Pro compressor and Pro DS, and then a DMG equality equalizer for my EQ going into an Avid Pro limiter. But I do have to say, those are all personal preferences, and a compressor is a compressor, an equalizer is an equalizer. You don't have to get crazy stuff to get good results. How do you reduce echo and reverb when live streaming from big rooms and you can't hang blankets all over the place? At that point, I'd say maybe looking into a lavalier microphone would be helpful, or if you don't mind having a microphone appear on camera with you, something like the Shure SM7B or another dynamic microphone similar to that. It's going to really pick up your voice right in front of it, but any of the reverb or the atmosphere of the room, it'll reject if the room is big enough. Which is the actual proper way to use a dead cat on a mic? Dead cat on top of foam or without foam? So first off, a dead cat is the giant, fuzzy thing that you see on top of a lot of production audio mics. It's definitely not a real dead cat. Secondly, you should use that with whatever Zeppelin or Windjammer it comes with. It's not meant to be used on top of the mic itself. What are the best top-of-the-line microphone options for recording male vocals in pop music? Big studios have a microphone locker that they're going to be able to find a microphone that fits exactly the voice that they're recording. And that can be kind of anything. I mean, I've been talking a lot about the SM7B as one of my favorite vocal microphones. Michael Jackson used that on Thriller very famously, and that's just a $400 mic. Whereas I think a lot of the vocals that you're hearing now are probably recorded on Neumann U87s or similar because those have a very specifically clean sound and they're a little bit brighter, which is what you expect for pop vocals. That about wraps it up for now. If you want to know more about any of the gear that I talked about in this video, go check out the kit link below. Don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, come follow me over on Instagram at AXK. Thanks for watching.